Hello everyone, Jolene here from Bookworm Adventure Girl. Welcome back, and if you are new, thanks so much for checking out my channel. Please hit subscribe and stick around. Today I am going to be talking about the Reading Across Canada 2023 Challenge. I will talk about the books that I read and might still read for January's prompt, and I will also give some recommendations for February. I know some of you are looking for that, and I'll give some overall tips. First, I want to thank everyone for the amazing response to this challenge. I was hesitant putting this out there. I thought it might just be me and 4 or 5 of my Canadian friends enjoying some can lit, which would have been absolutely wonderful. But I've heard from so many people, and I'm so thankful to all of you from across Canada and in different parts of the world who are willing to take the time to be part of this can lit adventure, and to do that in whatever way works for you. So I've heard some great things out there that some people are choosing to read a fiction and nonfiction book for each month or each prompt. Some people are choosing just certain months to join in. I've seen a couple of posts on Instagram about people's choices for their BC authors or potential authors. And it's exciting for me to see other people excited about reading can lit, which is really what this whole challenge is all about. Also, you already know the most important thing, which is there are no Reading Across Canada police. So you can make this challenge work how you want it to. There is no pressure at all. And if you are new and you're wondering, what are you talking about, Jolene? What is this challenge? I will leave links in the description box below to both the introductory video, and I will also leave a link to the tracker, which looks like this, to track the prompts as well if you want to use that. So I do have different resources where you can look up can lit, especially if this is new to you. I'm still constantly learning as well. I've also already seen people help each other out by, offering suggestions and recommendations. Thank you for that. I have been asked about different genres and kids' books, and I don't know children's books very well at all. So any help in that department would be greatly appreciated. For the resources, I will leave links to the Goodreads group where there are bookshelves for each of the prompts and provinces and territories, and I try to continue updating those. I will also leave a link to the Storygraph reading challenge that Emily set up for us. Thank you, Emily. Also, something new I started doing this year is I put a Canadian flag next to Canadian authors in the description box of all of my videos, starting I guess from January 1st, unless it's obvious. So for example, with my chat with Tamar Globerman, I didn't put a Canadian flag because it says she's a Canadian author on the thumbnail and in the title. So, but in my most anticipated books from January to March of 2023 video, there are flags, since I don't always say where the authors are from. That helps you, and it's another way you can look for Canadian authors and books that I'm reading and talking about all the time. I will also leave links below of other places you can look for Canadian literature. Some of them will be more specific than others. And also, if you are on Instagram, or I guess really on anything that you post, but on Instagram, if you use the hashtag Reading Across Canada 2023, then people can see your books and get ideas that way, and you can also search that as well. And I think right now there's only a few photos there, so thanks to Allison, who is a fellow CanLit reader from BC. But hopefully, as the challenge continues, we'll gain some more traction there. Okay, I think that's all the things that I wanted to say about resources. That was a lot. Basically, there's lots of resources. The links will be in the description box, and please feel free to share your own recommendations. Okay, so let's have a look at January. We are in the province of beautiful British Columbia this month. We are on the west coast. This is the province I was born and raised in, And the prompt for this province is to read a book about nature. As I mentioned in my introductory video, this challenge can be done by reading books set in the specific province or territory by an author born or living in the specific province or territory, and you can choose to add the prompt or not. The prompt can also be interpreted however you like. So for me, I'm hoping to read books off my shelf, and will hopefully follow the prompts. For January, I was able to do this. I've read 3 books for this prompt and have, I think, a couple that I'll share that I might potentially get to before the end of January. I read Tamar Globerman's memoir, Chasing Rivers, A Whitewater Life, but I read it in December to prepare for my chat with her, and I really enjoyed this. It ended up being my favorite memoir of 2022. If you want to hear more about this book, you can check it out in 2 videos, my December wrap-up, and you can also check out my chat with Tamar as well, and I will leave links to both of those in the description box. The book that I read that I officially count for this prompt is Greenwood by Michael Christie. I'm not going to talk too much about this book here since I will give more details in my wrap-up, but what I loved about this book most was its structure. I met Michael Christie shortly after Greenwood was published, and he signed my book for me, and it says, "Enjoy your walk through the woods." And I don't think he meant like just a walk in the forest. But if you look at this diagram of tree rings, then you can see how the book is set up. It starts out here in 2038, and then it goes in to 2008, 1930, 1974, 1934, and then 1908. And then it continues, and we go back to 2038 as we follow the rings forward. So basically we are following the Greenwood family of tree, which I think is so clever. I also read Bloom Where You Are Planted by Becca Shane Denter. This is basically a collection of 50 interviews of 49 women and 1 non-binary person, all from British Columbia. And there is some beautiful photography in this and some interesting stories. And I will talk more about this when I do my wrap-up as well. There are still 2 books on my radar that I may be able to get to before the end of the month. I was able to pick up Finding the Mother Tree by Suzanne Simard. I purchased this with a gift card I was given for Christmas. And I also picked up Forest Green by Kate Pullinger. I found it for $3 or $4, so I couldn't pass it up. And I talked about both of these when I did the recommendations in the introduction video, so I won't talk about them again here. Instead, let's take a look ahead to February. In February, we travel to Alberta, which is the province I currently live in. The prompt for Alberta is to read a book about a topic you are passionate about. This is a little trickier to give recommendations for because everyone has different topics of interest, but I'm going to do my best to give a few recommendations on the prompt. So, and I do have a very huge stack here. I'm going to start generally with authors born or living in Alberta. So these are going to be books that may not necessarily fit the prompt of a topic that you are passionate about, but they might, so you never know. But in this case, the book is set in Alberta, or the author was born or living in Alberta. Okay, the first recommendation that I have was actually the first book that I read this year, When We Were Vikings by Andrew David MacDonald, who is from Edmonton. This is a debut novel about Zelda. Zelda is 21 years old. She has fetal alcohol syndrome and she loves all things Vikings. So this is about her attempt to be legendary as she tries to navigate the world around her. I really enjoyed this book, and I'll be sharing more about it in my monthly wrap-up. The next book I'm going to suggest is also by an Edmonton author, and this is Dance Gladys Dance by Cassie Stocks. This book won the Stephen Leacock Award for Humor, so this is on the lighter side in many ways. It also has a ghost, so if you like books with ghosts, this could definitely work for you. Frida Zweig is the main character, or Zweig, I'm not sure. And she's at a crossroads in her life. She answers an ad in the paper and she meets Gladys. And this is a book about friendship and not giving up on your dreams. Another author that I'm going to put out there is Sigmund Bauer. I have never read any of Sigmund Bauer's books, so I'm just saying that. But I know he writes children's books, YA, and I think books for adults too. Like, I'm pretty sure. I actually had the opportunity to hear Sigmund Bauer speak several years ago now, but have never picked up anything by him. So I will leave his website below if you are interested in checking any of his books out and learning more about him. Sigmund was born in Red Deer, which is between Calgary and Edmonton. If you've read anything by him that you can recommend, then please put it in the comments below. For the next author, we are going back to Edmonton. I'm going to recommend Wayne Arthurson. The book that I read and loved by him is The Red Chesterfield. This was such a fun, unique, clever, and very short book. Also, Chesterfield for non-Canadians is a sofa or couch. And if you like crime and mysteries, then Wayne also has the Leo Desroches series, which I haven't read yet, but I have heard that they are really good. I'm also going to put Marie Lee on this list. This is Marie's debut novel, Compass, and Marie is a Calgarian author. This is an adventure story about a man who sets out on a journey to the Arctic floe. Now, here's something to consider, especially for people new to CanLit. The further along in this challenge we go, the more difficult that it will be to find books, and that's just the way it is, and to find authors that fit the prompts. Especially once we get out of Ontario, each month might be a little harder. I will be giving you recommendations, so no worries there. But actually finding some of the books might be a little difficult and trickier for people outside the country. So this is especially true when we go north to the territories in November and December. So the reason I am saying this is because you could keep Compass on your radar for Nunavut, since it is set there. It doesn't match the prompt necessarily that I've chosen, but I will give recommendations for that, as I said, but it certainly matches the setting. So that's my tip for this one, just in case you're looking for something for that. If you are looking for nonfiction, I'm going to recommend one of the best memoirs I have ever read, A House in the Sky by Amanda Lindaudt. A heads up that this is not for the faint of heart. Amanda was born in Red Deer, but I think she's here in Calgary when this memoir starts. I can't remember for sure. It has been a while since I've read this. She was a freelance journalist, and in 2008 she traveled to Somalia. She was kidnapped along with a photographer from Australia after being there only 4 days, and they were kept in captivity. They were kept hostage and tortured for 460 days. This is an incredible book. Okay, so topics you might be passionate about or at least interested in. Since February is Black History Month, some of you may want to read something along those lines. So I'm going to suggest a few Black Alberta authors. First is fellow Calgarian Suzette Mayer, last year's Giller Prize winner for The Sleeping Car Porter. This is definitely historical fiction and would give you an idea of some of Canada's history that is not well known, even to Canadians. Suzette Mayer has other books as well out if you want to check out some of her other books as well. Essie Adujan, also born in Calgary, now living in BC, has Washington Black and Half-Blood Blues. Both of these are Giller Prize winners, and both historical fiction with several locations. Washington Black is about a young slave boy from Barbados, and somewhere along his adventures, he does end up in the province of Nova Scotia for a brief period of time. And Half-Blood Blues is set in Europe mostly, but if you have an interest in blues music, this might be enjoyable for you. If you are looking for some nonfiction, then I would suggest a book that's still on my radar, and that is Out of the Sun on Race and Storytelling. This looks at how Black history has been depicted in art and then gives new perspectives that challenge the accepted narrative. Another nonfiction that I'm hoping to read myself next month is from author Desmond Cole, who was born in Red Deer, now living in, I think, Ontario. The Skin We're In, A Year of Black Resistance and Power. This is about the injustices faced by Black Canadians on a daily basis. It is divided by month, and then this book chronicles 1 year, 2017, of the struggles against racism in Canada. So for anyone, including Canadians, who think that Canada has it all figured out and it doesn't have, these kinds of issues, this will definitely tell a different story. Along those lines, some Canadians are attempting to work towards truth and reconciliation with Indigenous peoples living in Canada. And we have a history of genocide in this country that many would like to overlook, and it has been overlooked, but that is slowly changing. And if you are interested in Indigenous stories and learning, some of that history, then I will suggest one of the books that is on my list to hopefully read in February, and that is Legacy, Trauma, Story, and Indigenous Healing. This is by Suzanne Methot, or Metho, I'm not sure how she says it. She was raised in Peace River, Alberta, which is way north of Calgary. I'm going to say about 8 hours north and to the west. This book is about intergenerational trauma and healing. I'm sure this won't be an easy read, but I think it will be an important one. Other Indigenous authors are Billy Ray Belcourt, who is from the Driftpile First Nation. He has written poetry, but also a memoir called A History of My Brief Body. I love his relationship with his kokum, his grandmother. He also has a novel called A Minor Chorus, which I read last year, and it takes place in northern Alberta when a man goes back to his roots. I would be remiss not to put Joshua Whitehead on this list. Joshua is an OG Cree Two-Spirit author who lives in Calgary now. And like Billy Ray Belcourt, he has written poetry. But I'm going to suggest his fiction, which I realized I didn't grab, so I'll put a picture up, Johnny Appleseed, which is about a Two-Spirit indigiqueer character who is working as a cyber sex worker and is preparing to go back to the res for his stepfather's funeral. And Joshua Whitehead's nonfiction, Making Love with the Land. This is a collection of essays about our relationship to nature, to ourselves, to writing, and language. The topic I thought of next was sports, because I still have to finish Mark Tewksbury's memoir, Inside Out, Straight Talk from a Gay Jock. Most Canadians know Mark Tewksbury as an Olympic swimmer. And I remember when I asked a friend if he knew who Mark was, he said, oh yeah, he's one of the greatest swimmers of all time. But to me, Mark is a reader and a defender of On Canada Reads, and just a really cool guy, by the way. So we continue to laugh about this even now, how I had no idea who Mark was. But it's true, he is one of Canada's, and I would say the world's, greatest swimmers. And when he came out as gay, it was huge. And Mark continues to be an LGBTQIA2S+ advocate, especially for people in sport. Now, I can't talk about sports in Canada without, obviously, talking about hockey, and especially here in Alberta without talking about the great one. Wayne Gretzky, 99 Stories of the Game. Do I have to say more about this? I'm not sure. Wayne played for the Edmonton Oilers for, I think, close to 10 years. He is one of Canada's biggest icons, one of, some would say, the best hockey players of all time. The next topic is one that is close to my heart, as many of you know, and that is Rwanda. I normally read books about Rwanda in April, May, and June, but I may start early this year because Will Ferguson, a Calgarian author, originally from Fort Vermilion, has written Road Trip Rwanda, A Journey into the New Heart of Africa. This has sat on my shelf for way too long. This is a travel memoir that takes place 20 years after the 1994 genocide against the Tutsis in Rwanda. And Will Ferguson travels with his friend, who is a genocide survivor. And books about Rwanda are never easy, but I have a hunch that somehow Will Ferguson will include some humor along the way. And if you were thinking, I'm not into reading about Rwanda and that you would like something a little lighter, then no worries, I have you. I got your back. Will Ferguson has written a lot of books, more than 10 for sure, and some of them are definitely on the lighter side. So with titles like Happiness, you see that, and Beauty Tips from Moose Jaw, Travels in Search of Canada, I think you'd be in good hands. Moose Jaw is a city in Saskatchewan, for those who may not know. Canada has some very interesting place names. So I'm going to bring us back to Rwanda for a minute, though. It's a very small world in this vast country of Canada. Will Ferguson is friends with Marie Lee, who is an author that I mentioned earlier, and he is also friends with author Christine McGill, who I traveled to Rwanda with in 2014. So Christine was working on this book at the time. This is The Hope That Remains, Canadian Survivors of the Rwandan Genocide. In this book, each chapter tells the story of a different survivor. It's very well done. It's one of those books where after each chapter, I would read it, close it, and come back to it after a bit. The last book that I'm going to recommend, at least for now, is maybe for the history buffs out there, and this is Forgiveness by Mark Sakamoto. This is a book about Mark's family. It's his grandparents' story. His mother's father was captured and imprisoned as a POW in Japan during World War II. His father's mother and her Japanese-Canadian family were interned by the government of Alberta. So this is again part of Canadian history that many Canadians don't even really know about. I learned a little bit reading this book, but I can definitely learn more on this topic and about the Japanese internment camps that were here in Canada after Pearl Harbor. So I know there's some heavy topics in there, but I tried to put some lighter books in as well. If you have any books or authors that you would like to add to the list, please put them in the comments below. If you have a topic that you were hoping to read about, then please put that in the comments as well, and we will see what we can come up with. Again, I will put a lot of links to resources below, so hopefully there will be something for everyone. Thanks again to all of you for watching and for reading across Canada with me. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and don't forget to make every day an adventure.